I don't remember the exact moment I realized I didn't exist in my own family. It wasn't something dramatic, no big fight, no screaming. It was quieter than that. It was the way my parents introduced me to people. "This is Julian, our son." And then a pause, like the sentence had already ended. If someone looked at me waiting, my mother would add, almost as an afterthought, "And this is, well, she helps out." She never said my name. Not once. I used to think I imagined it, that maybe I was being sensitive, that maybe names just slipped sometimes. But when something happens enough times, you stop calling it an accident. You start calling it what it is. A choice. I'm Hazel. Or at least that's the name on my driver's license. On my contracts. On every check I've ever earned. Just not in my parents' house. In that house, I was the background noise. The one who carried things, fixed things, paid for things. Especially paid. For the last 4 years, I'd been sending my parents $1,800 every single month. No excuses, no delays. $1,800 wired on the first like clockwork. My father had a heart condition. That's what they told me. Medical bills stacking up, insurance not covering enough, stress making it worse. Every time I asked for details, my mother would sigh like I just insulted her. "Do you really need to see your father's suffering in paperwork form?" So I stopped asking. I just worked more. My job isn't something my parents understand or respect. I restore old buildings, historic properties, the kind most people walk past without noticing. Cracked walls, rotting beams, places that look like they're one storm away from collapsing. I go in, tear them apart piece by piece, and rebuild them exactly as they were meant to be. It's slow, dirty, precise work. My father calls it glorified construction. My mother calls it manual labor. Julian calls it cute. Julian, my older brother, is everything they're proud of. Clean hands, polished shoes, talks like he's always pitching something even at dinner. He's in commercial real estate, or at least that's what he says. From what I can tell, he mostly just talks about deals that are about to close and big opportunities that somehow never actually happen. But that doesn't matter. He looks successful. And in my family, that's the same thing as being successful. Meanwhile, I drive a 12-year-old truck that rattles when I hit 50 miles an hour. I live in a studio apartment above a laundromat. And I send my parents money they never once said thank you for. Not properly anyway. My mother's version of gratitude is, well, at least you're useful for something. The first year I told myself it was temporary. The second year I told myself family comes first. By the third year, I stopped telling myself anything. I just kept going. Because every time I thought about stopping, I pictured my father in a hospital bed. I pictured machines, bills, stress pushing him closer to something we couldn't fix. So I worked longer hours, took on more projects, skipped things most people don't even think about skipping. Vacations, weekends, sleep sometimes. I told myself it was worth it. It had to be. Because if it wasn't, then I'd spent 4 years of my life funding a lie. And that wasn't something I was ready to face. Not yet. That morning started like any other. I had a delivery in the truck, groceries mostly. My mother had called the night before with a list, reading it out like she was assigning a task to an employee. "Don't forget the imported olive oil this time," she said. "The one you got last time tasted cheap. It was $42 a bottle." But sure, cheap. I didn't argue. I never do. I just showed up. Their house looks exactly how you'd expect. Clean, staged, everything in the right place, like a model home no one actually lives in. My father was in the living room scrolling through his phone. No oxygen tank, no visible sign of the failing heart I'd been financing. He didn't look up when I walked in. "Groceries are in the kitchen," I said. A grunt. That was it. My mother was upstairs yelling something about a dress fitting for Julian's fiancée, Clara. Of course her name gets said out loud. I carried the bags into the kitchen, set everything down, and started putting things away. It's automatic at this point. I don't ask, I don't wait. I just do it. When I finished, I realized I'd left one bag in the truck, so I went back out to grab it. On my way back in, I passed the recycling bin by the garage door. The lid was slightly open, and a piece of paper stuck out just enough to catch my eye. I don't know why I stopped. Maybe instinct, maybe habit, or maybe some part of me was already looking for something I couldn't name yet. I pulled the paper out. It was a bank statement. Not unusual. My parents go through paperwork like they're running a small office. I wasn't trying to snoop. At least that's what I told myself. I just glanced at it, and then I didn't look away. Because the account name at the top didn't match anything I expected. Julian's Down Payment Fund. I actually thought it was a joke. Some kind of nickname. A placeholder. But then I saw the transactions. Monthly deposits. Exact amounts. $1,800. Every single month. For 48 months. My money. Every wire I'd sent. Every hour I'd worked. Every night I'd stayed up pushing through another project. All of it. Not for medical bills. Not for a hospital. Not for anything even close. It went straight into that account. For Julian. For his house. For his future. I stood there for a long time. Not moving. Not thinking exactly. Just processing. Because anger didn't hit first. Or even sadness. It was something colder. Cleaner. Like a switch flipped somewhere deep in my chest. Everything suddenly made sense. The lack of details. The deflection. The way my father never looked sick enough for the story they told. The way my mother always changed the subject when I asked questions. They didn't need me to understand. They just needed me to keep paying. I folded the paper carefully. Not crumpled, not torn. Just folded. And placed it back exactly where I found it. Then, I walked inside. My mother was coming down the stairs talking on the phone. No, the venue has to be perfect. We're not cutting corners on this wedding. She glanced at me, barely pausing. Did you put everything away? Yeah, I said. She nodded already, turning away. No suspicion. No concern. Why would there be? To them, I was still exactly what I'd always been. Reliable. Quiet. Invisible. I grabbed my keys from the counter. My father didn't look up. My mother didn't say goodbye. And for the first time in 4 years, I didn't ask if they needed anything else. I stepped outside, closed the door behind me, and stood there for a second. The air felt different. Or maybe I did. Because whatever version of me had been walking into that house every month, she wasn't walking back in again. I cut the transfer before I even got back to my truck. Right there in the driver's seat, engine off, hands steady. No speech, no warning. Just opened my banking app and ended it. 48 months of automatic loyalty gone in 10 seconds. I didn't wait to see if it felt good. It didn't. It felt necessary. I drove straight to the site after that. The Blackwood estate had been sitting untouched for years, wrapped in scaffolding and rumors. Most people saw it as a liability. I saw a structure that still had bones. The kind you don't replace, you respect. That morning, the crew was already there, stripping back damaged sections along the west wing. Dust in the air, wood exposed, quiet focus. That's where I think best. Not in conversations. In work. I picked up a set of plans and walked through the main hall tracing lines, with my eyes recalculating load paths, checking structural points that didn't match the original drawings. Everything about that house was honest. If something was broken, it showed. No pretending. No performance. By noon, my phone had already buzzed 3 times. Missed calls. All from my mother. I didn't answer. A message came in next. Did something happen with the transfer? I stared at it for a second, then locked my phone and got back to work. They noticed faster than I expected, but not fast enough, because while they were busy planning a wedding they couldn't afford, I was finalizing something they didn't even know existed. Arthur had been talking about the Blackwood estate for weeks. Not to me, of course. I heard about it the same way I hear everything else in that family by accident. Phone calls on speaker. Conversations I wasn't meant to be part of. He'd been bragging to Clara's parents, saying he was in the process of acquiring the property as a wedding gift, positioning it like a legacy move, like he was building something real. The truth, he didn't have the capital, didn't have the approval, didn't have anything except confidence and a phone full of contacts who had already stopped taking his calls. But confidence plays well in rooms full of people who don't ask questions. And Clara's family didn't. They saw what he wanted them to see. A successful man, a strong foundation, a future. I knew better. And more importantly, I knew exactly how to move faster than him. I didn't use my name. That would have been too easy to trace, too emotional. Instead, I used the LLC I'd set up 2 years ago. Quiet, clean, separate. The kind of structure you build when you don't want your personal life bleeding into your business. Or in my case, when you don't want your family anywhere near either. The offer went in that afternoon. Full cash. No financing contingencies. No delays. Just numbers that made the seller stop negotiating. By the next morning it was accepted. No drama, no bidding war. Just done. I signed everything digitally between site inspections. Didn't pause work. Didn't tell anyone. Because this wasn't about making a statement. Not yet. That evening I showed up to dinner. Same house. Same layout. Same silence when I walked in. Julian was already there, sitting at the table scrolling through something on his phone. He looked up just long enough to acknowledge me. "Hey," he said. Not my name. Just a sound. "Hey," I replied, taking a seat. My mother was in the kitchen, plating food like she was hosting a dinner party for people who mattered. My father stood near the window, phone in hand, pacing slowly. Something was off. You could feel it. Tension, but not directed. Not yet. We sat down. Plates in front of us. No one started eating. My father's phone rang. He answered immediately. "Yeah, this is Arthur." Pause. His posture changed. Not dramatically. Just enough. A slight stiffness in his shoulders. A tightening in his jaw. "What do you mean it's off the table?" Silence filled the room. Julian looked up. My mother froze mid-motion, fork hovering above her plate. "I had a verbal agreement," my father said, voice sharpening. "You don't just who bought it." Another pause. Longer this time. Then, "No, that's not acceptable. I want a name." His voice was louder now. Not controlled anymore. "They can't just walk in and take a legacy property like that. That's not how this works." I picked up my glass of water, took a sip. Slow. Measured. "They paid in full," he said, disbelief creeping in. Another pause. And then the shift. From frustration to anger. Sharp. Immediate. Unfiltered. "You tell them this isn't over," he snapped. "I don't care what entity they're hiding behind. I'll find out who they are." He ended the call hard enough that the sound echoed slightly in the room. Then he just stood there, breathing heavier than before. "They sold it," he said finally. Julian frowned. "What?" "The estate. Blackwood. Gone." My mother blinked. "That's not possible." "You said—" "I said I was working on it," he cut in. "Some corporate buyer came in and took it off the market. Cash." Julian leaned back in his chair, clearly irritated. "So what, you're just letting that happen?" My father laughed. but there was nothing funny about it. You think I had a choice? They outbid everything. No financing, no negotiation. He ran a hand through his hair, pacing again. Some nameless corporate vulture, he muttered, doesn't even have the decency to show their face. I set my glass down, carefully. No one looked at me. They were too focused on the version of reality they'd just lost. Julian shook his head. Clara's parents are expecting something. You told them. I know what I told them, my father snapped. My mother finally spoke. Soft, controlled, but tight underneath. So what do? That's when it got quiet again. Not the usual silence. This one had weight, because for the first time they didn't have a script. Didn't have a next move ready. They just had consequences. I leaned back slightly in my chair, watched them, listened, and for the first time in my life I wasn't waiting to be included in the conversation. I wasn't trying to fix anything. I wasn't calculating how I could help, because none of this, was my responsibility anymore. My father stopped pacing, looked at the table, at the plates, at the situation unraveling in front of him, and then he said it. Low, controlled again. I'll handle it. Julian didn't look convinced. My mother didn't ask how. They didn't need details. They just needed to believe he still had control. I stood up, chair sliding back quietly. I've got an early morning, I said. No one stopped me. No one asked where I was going. Of course they didn't. I was still invisible, still irrelevant, still useful. I grabbed my keys, walked to the door, and just before I stepped out I heard my father again. I don't care who they are, he said. I'll find them. I paused for half a second. Not enough for anyone to notice. Then I opened the door and walked out. Because the truth was, he already had. He just didn't know it yet. I watched them through the security feed before they even reached the front gate. Two figures moving like they owned the place. Confident, careless, familiar. I leaned back in my chair boots, still dusty from the sight, and zoomed in. Arthur, Julian. Of course. They didn't even hesitate at the locked gate. My father rattled it once, looked around like someone might be watching, which to be fair, someone was, and then Julian climbed over first. Clean shoes, expensive coat, no idea where to step. He landed wrong, almost slipped, caught himself. I didn't smile. I just kept watching. Because this wasn't surprising. This was predictable. They weren't here to break in. They were here to perform. Julian pulled out his phone, immediately turning toward the house, angling the shot so the scaffolding looked intentional. Progress, investment, vision. Arthur followed, pointing at parts of the structure like he had any idea what he was looking at. Stand over there, he said, gesturing toward the front steps. Make it look like you're inspecting. Julian adjusted his posture instantly. Shoulders back, chin up, like he'd done something to earn it. I switched camera angles. Got a clearer view of the west wing where we just exposed the internal frame. Raw wood, open sections, temporary supports. Real work. Not the version they were selling online. Julian snapped a few photos, checked them. Did it again? Caption it like the renovation's ahead of schedule, Arthur said. Clara's father loves that kind of thing. Julian nodded, already typing. I muted the feed. Not because I didn't want to hear it. Because I already knew what they'd say. I stood up, grabbed my jacket and headed out. The drive to the estate took 15 minutes. I didn't rush. Didn't need to. They weren't going anywhere. People like them never do. By the time I pulled up, they were still inside the perimeter. Julian was near the greenhouse, what was left of it. Glass shattered, frame unstable, structure barely holding together. Arthur stood a few feet back on his phone again. Always talking. Always selling. I parked outside the gate and didn't get out. Just watched. Not through a screen this time. In real life. It felt different. He kept pointing at things, explaining things, like he was giving a tour, like this was already his. Julian laughed at something. Relaxed. Comfortable. That part stayed the same. No matter the situation, he always found a way to be comfortable. I stepped out of the truck, closed the door. The sound carried. Julian turned first. Then Arthur. For a split second, there was confusion. Recognition came slower. Not because they didn't know me. Because they didn't expect me to be there. Hazel, Julian said, like the name felt unfamiliar in his mouth. I didn't respond. I walked up to the gate, unlocked it, and pushed it open. Arthur frowned. "What are you doing here?" he asked. I stepped inside. Close the gate behind me. "You shouldn't be here," I said. Calm. Flat. Not loud. Julian glanced at Arthur, then back at me. "We're just checking on the property," he said. "It's under renovation." "No," I said, "it's not yours." Silence. Arthur's expression shifted. Not confusion anymore. Annoyance. "Hazel," he said, tone tightening, "this is a business matter. You wouldn't understand." I almost laughed. Almost. Instead, I looked past them. At the structure. At the work we'd started. At what this place was going to become. "I understand enough," I said. Julian crossed his arms. "Look, whoever bought it, this is temporary. Dad's already working on a solution." Of course he was. Arthur stepped forward slightly. "You need to leave," he said. "This isn't your concern." I met his eyes. Held it for a second longer than he expected. Then I said, "You're trespassing." That landed. Not because of the word. Because of the tone. No hesitation. No uncertainty. Just fact. Arthur's jaw tightened. "Watch how you talk to me," he said. I didn't move. Didn't raise my voice. Didn't soften it either. "Leave," I repeated. Julian shifted, uncomfortable now. "This is getting weird," he muttered. "Let's just go." Arthur didn't move. Of course he didn't. Control matters more to him than logic. "You think you can tell me what to do," he said. "No," I said. "But I can call someone who will." Another pause. This one longer. Measured. Julian looked between us. Then back at the gate. He exhaled. "Dad," he said quietly. "Let's go." That was enough. Arthur stepped back. Not because he agreed. Because he calculated. Because causing a scene here without knowing who owned the place was a risk. And for the first time, he didn't have all the information. They walked out. No apology. No acknowledgement. Just tension. I locked the gate behind them. Waited until they drove off. Then I went back inside. The house felt different after that. Not violated. Clarified. Like whatever illusion they were holding on to had finally stepped into the wrong space. My space. I checked the greenhouse next. The frame was worse than I remembered. Support beams weakened. Foundation unstable. It needed careful work. Not shortcuts. Definitely not demolition. I pulled out my phone, took a few notes, flagged areas for reinforcement. Then I saw it. A notification. City Planning Office. Subject line, "Permit submission received." I opened it. And read it once. Then again. Because the first time didn't quite land. Application for demolition. Location Blackwood Estate. Greenhouse structure. Submitted by Arthur Bennett. I stood there, phone in hand, dust still settling in the air around me. There was a document attached. I opened it. Scrolled. Details. Dates. Authorization section. Signature. I stared at it. Not because I didn't recognize the name. Because I did. The signature wasn't Arthur's. It wasn't Julian's. It was mine. Or at least, a version of it. Close enough to pass at a glance. Not close enough if you knew what to look for. Forgery. Clean. Intentional. Not a mistake. not confusion. A decision. I zoomed in, compared it to the one on file from the purchase documents. Different pressure points. Wrong angle on the last letter. Subtle, but obvious. If you knew? I lowered the phone slowly. Looked around the greenhouse. At the structure they were ready to destroy just to keep a lie alive. And for the first time since finding that bank statement, I felt something shift again. Not shock. Not anger. Something sharper. Because this wasn't just about money anymore. This wasn't just about being used. They crossed a line. Légal. Irréversible. And they did it thinking I'd never notice. Thinking I was still invisible. I saved the document. Backed it up. Forwarded it to my attorney without a message. No explanation needed. Then I locked my phone, slipped it into my pocket, and stood there for a second longer. Because everything had changed. Again. The difference this time, I wasn't reacting. I was ready. I adjusted the coat on my arm as the valet reached for it, then stepped past him without handing it over. I wasn't here to be taken care of. I was here because my mother said I had to be. The venue was exactly what you'd expect. Marble floors, high ceilings, soft lighting, designed to make everything look more expensive than it already was. Clara's family didn't do anything halfway. Neither did mine when it came to pretending. I walked in and immediately spotted them. Arthur, near the bar, already mid-conversation. Julian standing beside Clara, smiling like he'd been born in that room. And my mother Beatrice positioned exactly where she always placed herself. Center adjacent, close enough to power to feel important, far enough to avoid real scrutiny. She saw me within seconds. Her expression didn't change. It never does. She just tilted her head slightly, like she was acknowledging a delivery had arrived. "There you are," she said as I approached. "You're late." "I'm on time," I replied. She ignored that. Of course she did. "I need you to take these," she said, handing me 2 coats without asking, "and stay near the entrance. People will start arriving any minute." Not a request. Never a request. I took the coats. Not because I agreed. Because I wasn't done yet. She leaned in slightly, lowering her voice just enough to make it feel personal. "And Hazel," she added, "try not to look like you just came from work." I glanced down at what I was wearing. Simple black dress, clean lines, no logos, nothing to apologize for. "I didn't," I said. She smiled. The kind of smile that isn't meant to be kind. "Well," she said, "do your best." Then she turned away. Conversation over. I moved toward the entrance, positioned myself where she wanted, watched the room fill. People like this don't rush. They arrive in waves. Controlled, measured. Every entrance calculated. Every handshake rehearsed. I recognize the type. I've restored enough of their buildings to know how they think. Preserve what looks good. Hide what doesn't. A couple approached the door. I stepped forward, took their coats, handed them off to staff behind the counter. No one asked who I was. They assumed. And my mother made sure those assumptions stayed intact. I heard her voice a few minutes later drifting from across the room. "She helps out with construction cleanup," she was saying. "You know how those sites get." Light laughter. Polite. Dismissive. I didn't turn around. Didn't need to. I'd heard that version before. Different wording. Sam message. Not worth mentioning. I continued working the entrance. Coats in. Names exchanged. Small nods. Invisible. Right where they wanted me. About 30 minutes in, Clara's father arrived. You could tell without being introduced. The room shifted, subtle but real. Conversations paused half a second longer than usual. Postures straightened. My mother moved immediately. Of course she did. She intercepted him before he even reached the main floor. Mr. Whitmore, she said, voice warm, controlled, practiced. It's such an honor. He smiled. Not overly. Just enough. And you are, he asked. There it was. The question she always wanted. Beatrice lifted her chin slightly. Beatrice Bennett, Julian's mother. Recognition clicked. Ah, he said. The future in-laws. Exactly, she replied, a hint of pride slipping through. Then she gestured toward me. Standing 10 feet away, holding someone else's coat. And this is, he began. My mother didn't hesitate. She assists with some of the more hands-on aspects of our projects, she said smoothly. Very reliable. Not daughter, not Hazel, just function. Mr. Whitmore gave a polite nod. Good help is hard to find, he said. Exactly, my mother replied. They moved on. Conversation elevated. Status secured. I handed off another coat. Kept my expression neutral, because reacting would have been a waste. This wasn't new. This was consistent. What was new was that I no longer needed anything from them. The room filled completely within the hour. Glasses clinked. Music softened the edges of conversations. Everything running exactly as planned. Until it didn't. The host stepped onto the small stage near the center of the room, microphone in hand. Ladies and gentlemen, he said, voice carrying easily. If I could have your attention for just a moment. The room quieted. Gradually, naturally, people turned, listened. These events are always about celebration, he continued. But tonight we also want to recognize something important to this community. He paused. Let the moment settle. As many of you know, the new Architectural Preservation Wing has been in development for the past year. A few nods. Murmurs of agreement. It's a project that means a great deal to this town. Another pause. But projects like that don't happen without support. Now the room was fully engaged. Focused. And tonight, he said, we want to thank the individual who made that support possible. My mother leaned slightly toward Clara. Probably one of their donors, she whispered. Julian nodded, half listening, already looking ahead to what came next. Recognition, networking, visibility. The host smiled. This donor chose to remain anonymous, he said. Until now. Silence. Curiosity. Exactly where he wanted them. He glanced down at the card in his hand. Then back up. And that donor, he said, is Hazel Bennett. The room didn't react immediately. It took a second. Because the name didn't land. Not yet. Then it did. Heads turned. On a bit on. Toward the entrance. Toward me. Still holding a coat. Still standing where I'd been told to stand. My mother didn't move. Not at first. Then her hand slipped. The wine glass she was holding tilted. Fell. Shattered against the marble floor. The sound cut through everything. Sharp. Final. Julian looked at her. Then followed the direction of everyone else's gaze. Toward me. Confusion. Then recognition. Then something else. Something heavier. The host continued speaking. Her contribution of $250,000 made this project possible. No one was whispering now. No side conversations. Just silence. Watching. Waiting. I stepped forward. Not quickly. Not dramatically. Just enough to close the distance. Enough to no longer be part of the background. The host smiled as I approached. Extended a hand. Miss Bennett, he said. Would you like to say a few words? I shook my head. No, I said. Simple. Direct. I didn't take the microphone. Didn't look at my family. Didn't explain anything. I just handed off the coat I was holding, turned, and walked back toward the entrance. Because the statement had already been made, and this time, they heard my name. I closed my apartment door behind me and locked it twice before setting my keys down. The silence inside felt different after the gala. Not heavy, just clear. I poured a glass of water, took a sip, and set it on the counter without finishing it. My phone buzzed almost immediately. Unknown number. I let it ring. Then another call. Same result. By the third one I picked up, not because I was curious, but because I wanted to control when this started. Hello. A pause. Then my father's voice. Hazel. He said my name like it had always belonged there, like it didn't cost him anything. We need to talk. No, I said. Silence. Not long. Just enough for him to recalibrate. This isn't optional, he replied. You've created a situation. I leaned against the counter. You mean I exposed one, I said. His tone tightened. This isn't a conversation for the phone. Then don't have it, I said, and ended the call. I didn't wait. Didn't second guess it. I turned my phone to silent and left it on the counter. Then I went to bed. Because, whatever they were planning, it could wait until morning. It didn't. The knock came early. Not aggressive. Not hesitant. Measured. Like someone trying to appear reasonable. I checked the time. 8:12 RM. Too early for anything good. I walked to the door and looked through the peephole. Arthur. Beatrice. And someone I didn't recognize. Suit. Briefcase. Neutral expression. Lawyer. Of course. I opened the door halfway. Didn't invite them in. What is this? I asked. My mother stepped forward slightly. We just want to talk, she said, voice softer than usual. It didn't sound real. Then talk, I said. Out here. The man in the suit cleared his throat. Miss Bennett, he began. My name is David Klein. I represent your parents. I figured, I said. He gave a small nod like he appreciated efficiency. We're here to resolve a concern regarding your recent actions and assets. Assets. Interesting choice of word. My father stepped in. You blindsided us, he said. At that event? No, I replied. You just didn't see it coming. His jaw tightened. Beatrice placed a hand lightly on his arm. A performance. Control the tone. Keep it civil. For everyone's sake, she said, we need to handle this carefully. I crossed my arms. Then handle it, I said. The lawyer opened his briefcase and pulled out a folder. Clean, organized, prepared. He handed it toward me. I'd advise you to review this, he said. I took it. Opened it. Read the first page. Then the second. And then I stopped. Because I didn't need to keep going. I already understood what they were trying to do. Petition for mental incompetency. Filed based on erratic financial behavior, social instability, and estrangement from immediate family. I looked up. Slowly. Seriously, I said. Arthur didn't flinch. You've been acting irrationally, he said. Large financial decisions. Public outbursts. I didn't say anything at that event, I replied. You didn't need to, he said. The damage was done. Beatrice stepped in again. We're trying to protect you, she said. That almost made me laugh. From what I asked. From yourself, she answered. There it was. Clean, direct, delusional. The lawyer adjusted his stance slightly. If the court finds sufficient concern, he said a temporary conservatorship could be established to manage your financial interests. Manage, meaning take, control, strip. I flipped the page once more. Then closed the folder. You want access to my company, I said. Arthur didn't deny it. You're not in a position to make sound decisions, he replied. I looked at him for a second. Really looked. And for the first time I saw it clearly. Not confidence. Not authority. Desperation. You lost control, I said. That's the problem. His expression hardened. You don't understand the consequences of what you did, he snapped. I understand them perfectly, I said. Beatrice's voice shifted. less soft now. More urgent. If this goes to court, it won't be clean, she said. Your reputation, your business, everything will be questioned. There it was. The threat? Wrapped in concern. I nodded once. Then I walked back into my apartment. Left the door open. They didn't follow. Didn't need to. I grabbed something from the table, turned, walked back, and held it out. A single document. The lawyer took it, browsed the first page, then the second. His expression changed. Subtle, but real. What is this? Arthur asked. The lawyer didn't answer immediately. He kept reading. Then he looked up at me. This is a certified independent psychological evaluation, he said. Yes, I replied. Completed 48 hours ago, he added. Yes. He flipped to the last page. Signed. Stamped. Official. Conclusion. No evidence of cognitive impairment, instability, or diminished decision-making capacity, he read. Silence. Beatrice's hand dropped from Arthur's arm. What does that mean? She asked. The lawyer closed the document. It means, he said carefully, this petition has no standing. Arthur stepped forward. That's not enough, he said. We can... No, the lawyer interrupted. Firm. Clear. This doesn't move forward. The shift in power was immediate. Not loud. Not dramatic. Just gone. The argument they walked in with, dead. I took the folder back from the lawyer, handed it to Arthur. You should keep this, I said. He didn't take it at first. Then he did. Tight grip. Controlled anger. You think this is over? He asked. I met his eyes. No, I said. I think this is exactly where it starts. Beatrice looked like she wanted to say something. An apology. A justification. Something, but nothing came out, because there was nothing left that would work. I stepped back, closed the door, locked it. Once. This time, that was enough. And on the other side of it, for the first time, they had no move left to make. I set my phone face down on the table before the waiter even brought the menus. Not casually, deliberately. Screen off, recording on. Then I leaned back in my chair and waited. The restaurant was the kind of place where everything is designed to make people behave. Low lighting, soft music, tables spaced just far enough apart to feel private, but not private enough to say something reckless. Arthur chose it for a reason. Control the environment, control the conversation. Beatrice arrived first, 5 minutes early. She always does that when she's trying to fix something. She sat down across from me, smoothing the napkin on her lap, like she was preparing for a performance. You look well, she said. I am, I replied. She nodded. Didn't smile. Not yet. Arthur and Julian walked in together. Julian looked tense. Arthur looked focused. Not angry. Not loud. That was new. They sat. No greetings. No small talk. Just the weight of what hadn't worked. A waiter appeared. Water poured. Order staken. No one really looked at the menu. We all knew this wasn't about food. The moment the waiter left, Beatrice started. We don't want this to go any further, she said. Direct. Good. I rested my arms on the table. Then don't push it, I said. Arthur exhaled slowly. This has already gone too far, he replied. The Gala, the documents. You forged my signature, I cut in. No emotion. Just fact. Julian shifted in his seat. Arthur didn't deny it. He adjusted his posture instead. Things were moving quickly, he said. We needed to keep the timeline intact. For what, I asked. For the wedding, Beatrice answered immediately. For Julian. Of course. Always Julian. I leaned back slightly. And that required a felony, I said. Julian looked down at the table. Didn't speak. Arthur's tone sharpened just enough to show through. It required initiative, he said. I almost smiled. Instead, I reached for my water. took a sip. Set it down. Say that again, I said. He frowned. What? That line, I said. Say it again. A pause. He hesitated. Just for a second, because something about the request felt off. Good. It required initiative, he repeated. I nodded once. Okay, I said. Beatrice leaned forward. Hazel, listen, she said. We can still fix this. I looked at her. Fix what, I asked. The situation, she said. The misunderstandings. There's no misunderstanding, I replied. Arthur stepped in again. We're not here to argue details, he said. We're here to find a solution. I tilted my head slightly. Then present one, I said. He glanced at Beatrice. Then back at me. You sign a temporary agreement, he said. Non-disclosure, asset alignment. Asset alignment, I repeated. The estate, he clarified. You transfer operational control to us until after the wedding. There it was. Clean. Direct. Still trying to take something that wasn't theirs. And after I asked, we revisit, he said. Meaning never. Beatrice added quickly, it's just for appearances. Clara's family expects stability. Clara's family expects honesty, I said. Julian finally spoke. Not everything needs to be exposed like this, he muttered. I looked at him. Not everything needs to be stolen either, I replied. He didn't respond. Arthur leaned forward. This is bigger than you, he said. If this collapses, it affects all of us. No, I said. It affects the lie you built. His jaw tightened. You're being short-sighted, he said. And you're being predictable, I replied. The waiter returned with appetizers. Perfect timing. Plates set down. Silence. He left. No one touched the food. Beatrice tried again. Softer this time. If you don't cooperate, she said, we'll have no choice but to escalate. I looked at her. How, I asked. Arthur answered. We report financial misconduct, he said. Question the source of your funds. Open an investigation. There it was. The backup plan. Not clean. Not smart. But desperate. You'll say I stole from you, I said. If necessary, he replied. I nodded slowly. Then I pushed my plate away. Not abruptly. Just done. I let the silence sit for a second longer. Then I reached forward. Picked up my phone. Turned it over. Screen still dark. Good, I said. 3 of them looked at it. Then back at me. Because now I don't have to explain anything, I added. Arthur frowned. What are you talking about? I tapped the screen once. Recording still running. Timestamp visible. 47 minutes. No one spoke. I slid the phone slightly closer to the center of the table. So far, I said calmly, I have you admitting to forging municipal documents. I looked at Arthur. Twice. Then at Beatrice. And you confirming you took money that wasn't yours. Then at Julian. And you, well, you've mostly just been here. Julian's face went pale. Arthur leaned forward. Turn that off, he said. I didn't move. No, I replied. Beatrice's voice dropped. Hazel, she said, this is illegal. No, I said, this is documentation. Arthur's tone shifted. Not anger anymore. Something tighter. Controlled. You don't want to do this, he said. I already did, I replied. Another pause. Longer this time. Heavy. Because they knew. There was no taking this back. No rewriting it. No spinning it into something else. I picked up the phone. Stopped the recording. Saved it. Then I stood. Chair sliding back quietly. This conversation is over, I said. Arthur didn't move. Beatrice didn't speak. Julian didn't look up. I placed cash on the table. Enough to cover everything, including their silence. Then I walked away. No rush. No hesitation. Just out. The air outside felt colder. Cleaner. I didn't look back. Didn't need to. because whatever control they thought they had left was gone. And this time, they knew it too. I stepped out of the car and smoothed the fabric along my waist before handing the keys to the valet. Not to impress anyone, just to make sure nothing distracted from what I was about to do. The venue was louder than the gala, brighter, more crowded. 300 guests, easy. Every table filled, every seat accounted for. Clara's family didn't believe in small anything. Neither did Julian when he thought it made him look important. I walked in without checking in. No hesitation. No scanning for approval. Just straight through the doors like I belonged there. Because I did. Just not in the way they expected. The room was already in motion. Servers moving between tables. Glasses raised. Music low enough to allow conversation high enough to cover tension. And there was tension. You could feel it. Under the surface. Arthur saw me first. Of course he did. His eyes locked on mine from across the room, and for a second he forgot to breathe. Not fear. Recognition. He knew exactly what I had. Beatrice followed his line of sight. Her posture shifted instantly. Controlled panic. Julian didn't notice right away. He was too busy smiling, laughing, performing. Clara stood beside him, perfect posture, perfect timing, perfect future, at least that's what she thought. I kept walking. No rush. No pause. I passed tables where people turned slightly trying to place me. Some recognized me from the gala. Most didn't. Didn't matter. I wasn't here for them. I reached the back of the room and stopped near the AV station. 2 technicians. Focused. Professional. One of them glanced at me. "Can I help you?" he asked. I pulled a small USB drive from my clutch. Held it up. "I need this played," I said. He hesitated. "Do you have clearance?" he asked. I met his eyes. "Yes," I said. Not louder. Just certain. That was enough. He took the drive, plugged it in, scrolled through the files, paused, looked back at me. "This isn't the scheduled content," he said. "I know," I replied. Another second of hesitation. Then he nodded. "Give me a signal," he said. I stepped back, positioned myself where I could see everything. Arthur was still watching me, not moving, not approaching. Because approaching meant acknowledging, and he wasn't ready for that. Beatrice leaned toward him, whispered something. He didn't respond. Julian finally noticed. His smile faltered for half a second, then came back. Because he didn't understand yet. The speeches started 10 minutes later. Standard, predictable. Friends, family. Stories that sounded better than reality. I barely listened. I was watching the timing, waiting. Julian took the microphone last. Of course he did. Center stage. Final word. He adjusted the mic, smiled, looked out over the room like he owned it. "I just want to thank everyone for being here," he said. Applause. Soft. Encouraging, he continued. "This night, it's everything we've worked for." Worked. Interesting choice. I glanced at the technician. Not yet. Julian kept going. "My parents taught me what it means to build something real," he said. There it was. The line, the one he believed, the foundation they gave me, he added, is the reason I can stand here today with Clara, with this future knowing it's all built on something strong and honest. I gave the smallest nod. The technician hit play. At first, no one noticed. The screen behind Julian flickered. He didn't turn around. Why would he? This was his moment. Then the image changed. Not the slideshow he expected. Not childhood photos. Not memories. Documents. Black and white. Clear. Sharp. Julian paused mid-sentence. Confusion. He turned. Looked at the screen. The room followed. Silence spread fast. Faster than any speech. The first document stayed up just long enough to be understood. Municipal permit. Blackwood estate. Signature. Hazel Bennett. Then a second layer appeared. Comparison. Real signature. Forged one. Side by side. No explanation needed. Julian stepped back from the microphone. Arthur stood up. Too fast. Too late. Turn that off, he said. No one moved, because no one knew who he was talking to anymore. The next image loaded. Bank statements. Transfers. Monthly. $1,800. 48 entries. Total highlighted. 60,000. Account name visible. Julian's down payment fund. A murmur started. Low. Uncontrolled. Clara looked at Julian, then at Arthur, then back at the screen. Her expression didn't break. It hardened. The audio came next. Clean. Short. Precise. Arthur's voice. It required initiative. Another clip. Beatrice's voice. We took what we needed. That was enough. 15 seconds. That's all it took. The room didn't explode. It collapsed. Quiet. Heavy. Like something had been removed all at once. Clara stepped away from Julian. Not dramatic. Just distance. Her father stood. No hesitation. He walked forward, straight to Julian, and spoke low enough that only the front tables heard. But everyone saw. Leave, he said. Julian didn't argue, didn't defend, didn't explain, because there was nothing left to say. Arthur tried to step in. Let's talk about this, he said. Clara's father didn't look at him. Now he repeated. Security moved before anyone asked. Professional. Efficient. Julian was guided out. Arthur followed. Beatrice stayed frozen for a second longer. Then she turned and walked after them. No one stopped them. No one helped, because the room had already decided. I stayed where I was. Didn't move. Didn't speak. Didn't need to. The technician looked at me. Should I? He started. No, I said. Leave it. He nodded. Let the final image stay on screen. The truth. Unedited. Unspun. Unavoidable. I turned. Walked toward the exit. Same pace I came in with. No rush. No hesitation. And just before I reached the door, someone said my name. Not loud. Not forced. Just clear. I didn't turn around. I didn't need to. Because this time, they remembered it. I pushed the gate open, just as the morning light settled across the front steps. No noise, no rush. Just the sound of metal giving way and the quiet that followed. The Blackwood estate looked different in daylight. Not because it had changed overnight, because it was finished. Stone cleaned, windows restored, structure solid again. Nothing hidden. Nothing pretending. I walked up the steps, unlocked the front door, and stepped inside. The air still carried that faint scent of wood and polish. New work layered over something old. Earned, not staged. I set my bag down near the entry and moved through the main hall. Every line exactly where it should be. Every detail accounted for. This wasn't just a project. It was proof. I stepped into the atrium and stopped. Sunlight cut clean through the restored glass ceiling, hitting the center floor exactly the way it was designed to 100 years ago. No shortcuts. No substitutions. Just the way it was meant to be. My phone buzzed in my pocket. Once. Then again. I didn't check it right away. I already knew what it was. News travels fast when it has nowhere to hide. I walked over to the kitchen, poured coffee, and leaned against the counter. Then I checked. 3 missed calls. 2 messages. 1 voicemail. Unknown numbers. And 1 from a name I recognized. My attorney. I called him back. He picked up immediately. They've been served, he said. No greeting. No build-up. Just information. I took a sip of coffee. Both, I asked. Yes, he said. Forgery and financial fraud. The evidence was more than sufficient. Of course it was. They'll try to negotiate, he added. Or delay. They can try, I said. They will, he replied. But it won't change the outcome. I nodded even though he couldn't see it. Keep me updated, I said. I will. The line went quiet. I ended the call. Set the phone down. And just stood there for a second. Because this was the only part that didn't need me to push. The law doesn't care about family dynamics. It cares about evidence. And I gave it everything it needed. A sound outside pulled my attention. Engines. More than one. I walked back through the hall and out to the front. From the top of the steps, I could see the road beyond the gate. 2 police cars. Park it. Still. Across town. I didn't need to be there to know what was happening. Doors opening. Papers handed over. Voices raised. Control slipping. Not dramatic. Just final. I turned back inside. Because that part wasn't mine anymore. About an hour later, the next sound came. Different. Closer. A car pulling up directly outside the gate. Then another. Doors opening. Not official. Not controlled. Desperate. I didn't rush. I finished my coffee. Set the cup down. And walked to the front door. By the time I stepped outside, they were already at the gate. Arthur. Beatrice. No security. No distance. Just them. He looked older. Not physically. But something had dropped. Weight. Position. Control. Beatrice stepped forward first. Hazel, she said. My name. Clear. Correct. Late. I didn't respond. I walked down the steps slowly. Stopped just inside the gate. Didn't open it. Arthur gripped the bars. Not hard. Just enough. We need to talk, he said. I looked at his hands. Then at his face. Then back at the gate. No, I said. Beatrice's voice cracked. We didn't know it would go this far, she said. I met her eyes. You did, I replied. She shook her head. No, we thought. You thought I wouldn't do anything I said. Silence. Arthur stepped closer. Listen, he said. We can fix this. I almost repeated myself. But I didn't. I let him finish. Charges can be reduced, he continued. Statements can be clarified. We just need... You need control, I said. He stopped. Just for a second. Because the word landed. Beatrice tried again. We're your family, she said. There it was. The last card. Always the last one. I looked at her. Really looked. And for the first time, I didn't feel anything about it. Not anger. Not hurt. Just distance. You used that word when it benefited you, I said. Arthur's jaw tightened. This doesn't have to end like this, he said. It already did, I replied. Another pause. Longer. Because there was nothing left to argue. Nothing left to threaten. Nothing left to take. Beatrice's voice dropped. Soft. Please, she said. Not dramatic. Just empty. I reached for the gate. Not to open it. To steady it. Cold metal under my hand. Solid. Real. Something built. Something held. My name is Hazel, I said. They didn't move. Didn't speak. You never used it, I continued. My voice didn't change. Didn't rise. Didn't break. Just steady. Now you will. I let the silence sit there. Between us. Heavy. Unavoidable. Then I stepped back. Turned. And walked up the steps. No hesitation. No second look. I opened the door. Stepped inside. And closed it behind me. The sound didn't echo. It didn't need to. Everything that mattered had already been said. I walked back to the atrium. sat down where the light hit the floor, picked up my coffee again. Still warm, still mean. Outside, I could hear nothing. No voices, no movement, just distance. And for the first time, there was no space left in my life where I didn't exist.